Hi, this is Peggy Miller, Highland Winds LLC, and I'm a medical herbalist, and this is Intro B to the Medical Herbal podcast series, which is being shown on MCAT as well as I'll be putting it on YouTube and possibly looking for a couple radio stations to air it as well. Basically, in this part B of the intro, I just wanted to touch on a couple items that I thought needed their own title. One of them is pregnancy. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't repeat it all the time throughout all the different segments that I'll be doing. But in my opinion, and I take a very conservative standpoint on this, far more conservative than a number of other medical herbalists, but it's in my practice where I have felt the most comfortable. I recommend when a woman is pregnant, particularly in the first 5 months or so, but really I stick to it pretty much throughout. And that is that there are many herbs that are what's called emmenagogues. Herbs you'd be surprised. Rosemary even is a sort of what I call lightweight emmenagogue. An emmenagogue means that it sort of thins blood and can clear small blood clots. Well, when you think about it, when you've just gotten pregnant, it's the equivalent of a tiny blood clot in your uterus. The equivalent. So emmenagogues are probably not a good idea if you're wanting to keep the baby. So basically some of the main ones, and the reason I bring this up now is because I do get into maintenance in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And, I touch on herbs that are really good for maintenance, good for your health. And I don't always follow those up with, but if you're pregnant, no, these are not necessarily good ones to take. I'm mentioning it here because I'm very clear about what I recommend for pregnant women, and that is fennel and dandelion. Those are the two that I am absolutely comfortable. And there are a lot of herbs. It's hard to believe, but cinnamon. I mean, who hasn't had cinnamon? I will admit that when I was pregnant with my first child, cinnamon was something I wanted. Cinnamon is actually a fairly strong emmenagogue, and that it's good for that. It helps clear and move the blood, and so that like in winter, when you have blood stagnation increases because of the cold in certain climates, cinnamon is a great herb to use. And I will say things like that. But here again, if you're newly pregnant, that's probably not a good. I stick to dandelion and fennel. They're not emmenagogues. Dandelion is a great anti-inflammatory. It helps keep the liver cleansed. And when you're pregnant, throughout the pregnancy, having a readily accessible anti-inflammatory is a useful thing to have. Fennel helps settle the stomach. It helps settle the intestines. It helps with food stagnation. And so these two can be used together or singly and can be a tea that a pregnant woman can turn to, 3 times a week and just sip on. And I stand by them. Highland Winds LLC. I'm the medical herbalist for my business, and that is my position on that. So that's my position related to pregnancy and herbs. Then, dosages. One of the things, as I plow through the different segments, each of which will be 15 minutes long, I will be sometimes saying, for this, you might try codonopsis, or for this, I highly recommend dongi, or prepared Romania, and there's a number of herbs that I do just for maintenance, not for strong formulas, which then that's a different thing completely, and you need to make sure you're using a formula that's been prepared by a medical herbalist with the correct dosages. But when you're using for maintenance, you know, a little bit of codonopsis to help keep your energy level up, periodically, maybe every 6 months or once a year, you are clearing blood stagnation, you are clearing key stagnation, I will mention herbs. What's the dosage? I don't I don't stop to say, okay, this is exact formula for each of these things. Because I'm trying to cover a number of issues within a 15-minute segment. But I wanted to mention dosage here because generally there are some things that only 1.5 to 3 grams is all that you need, and licorice tends to be one of those. And I mentioned licorice. It's nice tasting. 3 grams of licorice plus 6 grams of fennel makes just a lovely tea. And it's one of the teas I actually make. It's delicious, and licorice helps stabilize the qi, can help increase qi, and fennel, as I said, really helps with the stomach. It's very nice tasting, helps with food stagnation. Most of the herbs that I mentioned, codonopsis, atractylodes, as I said, dongi, schizandra, that I mention in the maintenance section where I say, go ahead and use a little of this. Most of them you do not want to use more than 6 to 7 grams in a quart of tea. So that means, but often you want to combine. So that means, let's say you're making a quart of tea and you want to try a little schizandra and you want to put in a little hawthorne or a little cornice, which I do touch on, then I would probably say put in like 5 grams, 4 to 5 grams of each one, meaning total of 10 grams, 8 to 10 grams total, but 4 to 5 grams, 6 grams, somewhere right in there, and make a quart of tea. That's really, you don't need to go over that. I'll mention Perea, I'll mention codonopsis. In formulas, a medical herbalist will prepare a formula and will take into consideration the size of the person, as well as sometimes, because we're dealing with a chronic problem, we know what we're dealing with, and we will go to higher levels, 8, 9, 10, occasionally 14. But for just general tea making, using these things to help with maintenance, help keep your joints cleared, that sort of thing, then usually that level between 4 and 7 grams. And I would initially just try, but you can combine them, meaning 4 grams of one plus 4 grams of another, put them together in the pot and make a tea using both. So I hope that's clarified a little bit of what I mean of the type of dosage levels for preparing your own teas. Always, and if you, the only other thing I do want to point out is that for teens, I don't go younger than that in my breakdown segments on maintenance, but I do talk to teens. Teens should dilute it a little more, not much, because by the time you're into your teens, 13 on up, your body can handle that kind. I'm not, because those aren't super strong dosages, and I'm recommending only a little bit of this herb and a little bit of that herb. So basically, that's what I mean. If you're using dandelion or myrrh, which are both clear blood stagnation, as does tianchi ginseng, I would start with even less. I would start with, 4 grams and only 1 at the most 2. And if it was a teen, I would stick to just trying 1, myrrh or dandelion, because, and here again, remember, if you're using blood-clearing herbs like dandelion, myrrh, and tianchi ginseng, you don't want to use those if you're pregnant. And there's a whole host of other ones. Musk is not a good idea. Barley grains are not good if you're pregnant. So there's a whole host. So stick with, if you're pregnant, what I talked about, fennel. And this applies, obviously, this applies to all the other things like alcohol. And, just there's a lot of pregnant people need to keep their intake of things in moderation. And just there are a lot of things, as I said, like barley. Barley bread is common. Musk is common for baths. Musk oil, put it in your bath. Lovely smelling. It's not good. So there's a number of things out there, just like you don't want to be using a lot of pharmaceuticals and a number of things that if you're pregnant. And if you ever, I do take clients, if you ever want to talk to me and go through this much more carefully, contact me. I'm Peggy Miller, Highland Winds LLC. My email is highlandwinds@gmail.com. So this has been Intro B, and I'll stop here. I'll be doing next week overview. I'll start the overview where I'll be talking about all these building blocks and what I mean by Chinese herbalism and Ayurvedic herbalism, yin and yang and tridosha and all those things. So I hope you'll stick with me and learn more about this, and you have a great day, okay? Thanks. Bye.